For years, you have probably heard that you need to walk 10,000 steps a day to stay healthy. Maybe you have a fitness tracker that buzzes at you when you fall short. Maybe you have felt that little pang of guilt when you only managed 6,000 steps on a busy day. Well, I am here to tell you something that might change how you think about walking forever. The 10,000 steps target was never based on science. It was a marketing campaign.
Wait, what?
Welcome to Longevity Lab. I am Claire.
And I am Robert. Claire, you cannot just drop a bombshell like that and not explain. I have been trying to hit 10,000 steps for years. My smartwatch even celebrates when I reach it. Are you telling me that number was made up?
I am telling you exactly that. And the research that has been done since then tells a very different story about how many steps we actually need for health and longevity. It is a story that I think is genuinely liberating.
Okay, I need to hear this. But first, how did we end up with 10,000 steps in the first place? That number feels so specific, it sounds scientific.
It does sound scientific, and that is exactly the problem. The 10,000 steps target originated in Japan in the 1960s. A company called Yamasa Clock, which was a forerunner to companies that make pedometers today, released a device called the Manpo K. And Manpo means 10,000 steps in Japanese.
So it was literally a product name?
Exactly. It was a marketing slogan. The company chose that number because it was a nice round figure that tested well with consumers. It was never based on a clinical trial or any kind of physiological research about what the human body needs. But it caught on, and over the decades it became embedded in our culture. Doctors repeated it, fitness trackers adopted it, insurance companies started using it as a benchmark, and now most people believe it is backed by rigorous science.
I had no idea. I genuinely thought that was a medical guideline, like the World Health Organization or the American Heart Association determined that 10,000 was the number.
And they do have physical activity guidelines, but they are quite different from a specific step count. The World Health Organization recommends that adults get 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity. That is roughly 20 to 30 minutes a day of brisk walking. Let me do the math for you. That translates to roughly 3,000 to 4,000 steps at a brisk pace depending on your stride length, not 10,000.
So the official health recommendation is actually under half of what I have been trying to hit every day.
That is right. And the real story gets even more interesting when you look at what the research actually shows about step counts and longevity. There has been a major study. I want to talk about this because it really changed how I counsel my clients. A 2019 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine followed nearly 18,000 older women with an average age of 72 and tracked their daily step counts against mortality rates over about 4 years.
And what did they find?
They found that women who averaged about 4,400 steps per day had a significantly lower mortality rate compared to women who only took about 2,700 steps. That is a huge difference for relatively few steps, and the benefits continue to increase up to about 7,500 steps per day. But beyond that point, the curve flattened. There was no additional benefit from walking 10,000 steps compared to 7,500.
So the sweet spot is around 7 to 8,000, not 10,000.
That is what the data suggests for that age group. And then a more recent study in 2022, published in The Lancet, looked at data from over 47,000 adults across multiple continents. They found something even more nuanced. For adults under age 60, the optimal step count for reducing mortality risk leveled off around 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. But for adults age 60 and older, the optimal was around 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day.
So the number actually decreases as we get older?
It does not necessarily decrease in the sense that older adults need less movement. It is more that the curve of benefit shifts. Older adults get a very large benefit from increasing from a very sedentary level, say 2,000 steps, to around 4,000, and the benefit continues up to about 6,000 or 8,000. Beyond that, the additional gain in longevity is minimal. The important thing here is that the biggest gains come from moving from completely sedentary to moderately active.
That is such a relief. I know so many people in my age group who feel guilty because they cannot hit 10,000 steps due to joint pain or just a busy day. They think they are failing at health.
And that guilt itself is a problem. Health is not about hitting an arbitrary number, it is about consistency and intensity. There is another layer to this research that I think is even more empowering. The studies also looked at step intensity, not just how many steps you take, but how fast you take them.
So speed matters?
It does. The research found that women who walked at a faster pace, like a brisk walk where you are slightly out of breath, got more benefit per step than those who strolled slowly. That means a 30-minute brisk walk that covers about 3,000 steps might be more beneficial than a slow 2-hour walk that covers 8,000 steps. The intensity creates a cardiovascular stimulus that triggers improvements in heart and lung function, blood pressure regulation, and metabolic health.
So I could get more benefit from a shorter, faster walk than from a longer, slower shuffle? That is great news for someone like me who has limited time.
Exactly. And it changes the paradigm. Instead of thinking I need to hit an arbitrary step count, you should think about engaging your cardiovascular system every day. Even a brisk 10-minute walk after a meal has measurable benefits for blood sugar control and circulation.
Let me process this. So for years, I have been walking aimlessly around my neighborhood in the evening, trying to get my step count up to that magic number, when actually I could have been doing a shorter, more intentional walk and getting the same or better health benefits.
And feeling much less pressure about it. Robert, I want to tell you about the mechanism here, because understanding the biology makes this so much more motivating. When you walk at a moderate to brisk pace, your heart rate increases, your blood vessels dilate, and your muscles demand more oxygen. This triggers a cascade of beneficial adaptations. Your mitochondria, which are the energy factories inside your cells, actually become more efficient at producing energy. Your body becomes better at regulating blood sugar because your muscles become more sensitive to insulin, and your cardiovascular system becomes more efficient at delivering oxygen to your tissues.
So it is about quality, not just quantity.
Quality and consistency. The body responds to a regular stimulus. A brisk 20-minute walk every day is much better than a 2-hour hike once a week. The molecular signaling pathways that promote brain health, reduce inflammation, and support healthy aging are triggered by frequent moderate bouts of physical activity, not by sporadic intense efforts.
That makes perfect sense. I have always felt better on days when I walk, even if it is just a short walk around the block after lunch. I thought it was psychological, but you are saying it is biological.
It is both. There is a real biochemical effect. Walking increases blood flow to the brain, which delivers oxygen and nutrients and removes metabolic waste products. There is even research showing that regular walking is associated with a lower risk of cognitive decline. A study from 2021 found that older adults who walked at least 4,000 steps per day had larger hippocampal volumes. The hippocampus is the brain region most associated with memory formation.
So walking literally grows your brain.
In a very real sense, yes. You are stimulating neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons, through physical activity, and you do not need to run a marathon to get this effect. A consistent, moderate walking habit will do it.
Okay, but let me ask the question I think a lot of our listeners are wondering. If 10,000 steps is a myth, and the real number is lower, does that mean I should just aim for 6,000 and not worry about the rest? Or should I still try to move more if I can?
That is an excellent question. And the answer is nuanced. The research shows diminishing returns beyond a certain point, but that does not mean additional movement is bad for you. It means the marginal benefit decreases. Moving from 2,000 to 4,000 steps per day gives you a huge longevity boost. Moving from 8,000 to 10,000 gives you a much smaller boost. So if you are currently at 2,000 steps per day, your biggest priority should be to gradually increase to 4,000 or 5,000, not to try to jump to 10,000 overnight.
That feels so much more achievable. I think one of the reasons people give up on walking goals is that they are too ambitious.
Exactly. Behavioral science tells us that small, achievable goals lead to long-term habit formation. The all-or-nothing mindset is the enemy of health. If you aim for 10,000 and only get 4,000, you might feel like you failed. But if you aim for 4,000 and get 4,000, you feel successful. And that success reinforces the habit.
And then maybe you naturally increase over time.
Precisely. And you might find that as you get stronger and more fit, you naturally want to walk a little longer or a little faster. The body enjoys movement when it is not forced.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the intensity piece. You said a brisk pace gives more benefit per step. How do I know if I am walking fast enough?
There is a simple rule of thumb. You should be able to talk while you walk, but you should not be able to sing. If you can sing, you are not working hard enough. If you cannot talk at all, you are working too hard and may not sustain the activity. The sweet spot is what we call conversational pace. You are breathing deeper than at rest, but you are not gasping.
That is helpful. I have also heard about people talking about walking at a certain heart rate. Is that useful?
Heart rate zones are helpful for people who are already quite fit and want to optimize their training. But for most people, especially if you are just starting to build a walking habit, the talk test is perfectly adequate. Your heart rate will naturally increase as you walk faster. Over time, you will notice that the same pace feels easier. That means your cardiovascular fitness is improving. That is a sign of progress.
So I should walk at a pace where I can talk but not sing. Got it. Okay, now I want to talk about the elephant in the room. What about people who cannot walk very much? Maybe they have arthritis or balance issues or just very demanding jobs where they sit all day.
That is such an important point. And the research on sedentary behavior shows that the negative health effects of prolonged sitting are not fully offset by a single workout. If you sit for 9 hours and then go for a 30-minute walk, you are still getting some benefit from the walk, but your body is also being negatively impacted by the 9 hours of sitting.
So it is not just about the total steps at the end of the day, it is about how you accumulate them.
Yes. The evidence suggests that breaking up sedentary time with short movement breaks is very beneficial. Even standing up and walking around your office for 2 minutes every hour can improve blood sugar regulation and reduce cardiovascular risk. There is a concept called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. It refers to all the calories you burn from moving around during the day that is not formal exercise. Fidgeting, standing, walking to the printer, taking the stairs, all of that adds up.
So the person who paces while on the phone, who walks to the coffee shop instead of driving, who takes the stairs instead of the elevator, that person is getting a real health benefit even though they might not be doing a workout.
Absolutely. And this is one of the most empowering messages in all of health science. You do not need a gym membership to be healthy. You do not need to carve out an hour a day for structured exercise. You can integrate movement into your daily life in ways that feel natural and sustainable. The research on blue zones, which are regions where people live significantly longer, healthier lives, shows that movement is woven into daily life. People walk to the market. They garden, they walk up and down hills, they do not have a fitness class, they just live in an environment that naturally encourages movement.
That is so different from our modern lifestyle, where we engineer movement out of our lives. We drive everywhere, we sit at desks, we order things online so we do not have to go to the store.
And that is why the step count guideline, even the corrected one, is useful. It gives people a tangible goal. Instead of saying be more active, which is vague, we can say aim for 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. That is concrete, but the key is to separate the evidence from the marketing. The science says 6 to 8,000 steps with some brisk walking is excellent for longevity. It does not say 10,000 is the magic number.
I have to say, I feel a weight lifted. I have been carrying this guilt around for years. I would look at my smartwatch at the end of the day and see 7,000 steps and feel like I had not done enough. Now I know that 7,000 is actually in the sweet spot.
It is perfectly fine. And if some days you only get 4,000 steps, that is also okay. The research on longevity is about patterns over weeks and months, not perfection on any single day. The people who live the longest do not obsess over daily step counts. They simply walk more than the average person.
I want to talk about one more thing. You mentioned that for people over 60, the ideal range is 6 to 8,000. I am in my mid 60s, so that is my target range now.
That is the evidence based recommendation. And I want to emphasize a point that often gets missed in these discussions. The study I mentioned from The Lancet in 2022 was a meta analysis, which means it combined data from multiple studies to get a very robust picture. They found that for adults age 60 and older, the risk of premature death decreased by about 50% when comparing those who took about 6,000 steps per day to those who took about 2,000. That is a massive reduction in risk from a very achievable amount of walking.
50% lower risk just from walking?
50%. Let that sink in. No drug has that kind of effect on all-cause mortality, and the side effects of walking are better sleep, better mood, stronger bones, and better cardiovascular health. It is arguably the most powerful health intervention we have.
That is incredible. And I am guessing the effect is even greater for people who go from very sedentary to moderately active.
The biggest gains are always at the bottom of the curve. If you currently walk 1,000 steps per day and you increase to 3,000, you get an enormous health boost. The person who goes from 8,000 to 10,000 gets a much smaller boost. So the public health message should really be, if you are sedentary, just start moving. Even small increases matter.
So, if someone is listening right now and they are sedentary, what would you tell them to do tomorrow?
I would tell them to put on comfortable shoes and walk for 10 minutes at a pace that feels natural, not fast, just pleasant. Do that tomorrow and do it again the next day. After a week, increase to 12 minutes. After 2 weeks, increase to 15. Within a month, you will be walking 20 minutes a day, which is roughly 2,000 steps. Within 3 months, you could easily be at 4 to 5,000 steps per day. And that alone will dramatically improve your health trajectory.
And that does not require any special equipment or a gym membership or even a lot of time.
Nothing except a pair of comfortable shoes. And if you cannot walk outdoors due to weather or mobility issues, you can walk in place in your living room. You can walk around your kitchen while waiting for coffee to brew. You can walk down a hallway. The movement itself is what matters.
I love that. Claire, this has been genuinely eye-opening. I came into this episode thinking I was going to get confirmation that I needed to keep pushing for 10,000 steps. Instead, I learned that I have been doing fine all along, and I can actually redirect my energy toward making my walks more intentional and brisk.
That is the takeaway I hope every listener walks away with. The 10,000 steps target was never a scientifically validated health goal. It was a marketing campaign that became a cultural norm. The real science says that 6 to 8,000 steps per day, with some of them at a brisk pace, is excellent for longevity and health. And the most important thing is to move consistently, not perfectly.
Today is rule 6 to 8,000 steps with some brisk ones, and no guilt if you do not hit 10,000.
Perfectly stated. And as always, if you have any pre existing health conditions, particularly cardiovascular issues or joint concerns, it is always a good idea to have a conversation with your doctor before starting any new exercise routine. But for most people, walking is one of the safest and most beneficial activities you can do.
And I am going to put on my walking shoes right after this recording. I have a new target 7,000 steps with at least 15 minutes of brisk pace.
I love it. That is exactly the kind of specific, achievable goal that leads to lasting change. Thank you for being such a great sounding board, Robert.
Thank you for finally giving me permission to stop chasing that 10,000 step dragon.
You have my full scientific approval.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to Longevity Lab. We are here every day with a new science backed insight to help you live a longer, healthier, more vital life. See you next time.